welcome you to the first video of this kind. One of the things I want to do is review movies and books and films and that sort of thing, along with the Bible studies and the other posts that I do. So this is going to be the first one that we're going to do. That music you heard is also from my buddy Dave Bradley down in North Carolina. It's a retake on a song that a band of mine used to do years ago called Better Way, and he kind of revamped that. So that's him playing all that. Today, I want to just give some brief comments on the new album from Sweet and Lynch. It's a super group, for lack of a better word, featuring Michael Sweet, vocalist and guitar player for Stryper, George Lynch, the guitar player for Dokken and Lynch Mob and some other groups. James Lomenzo's the bass player, and he's played with Megadeth and White Lion and Zakk Wylde's Black Label Society. And then Brian Tichy, I think I'm saying it, T-I-C-H-Y, Tichy, who plays drums for the Dead Daisies, and I believe he's played drums with Whitesnake. So it's a super group. This is their second album. It's brand new, just out. Their first album was called Only to Rise, came out in 2015, was a pretty solid melodic hard rock album. It kind of brought in some of the best of Stryper and the best of Dokken, and then had some kind of more modern vibes to it. And this follow-up called Unified is much more the same. There's nothing earth-shattering on this album at all, but it's nothing really disappointing either. I've been a Stryper fan for 31 years now. I was a little late to the game. They were actually out a couple of years before I heard them, but I came on board in the summer of 1986 when I was 16. It was right after Soldiers Under Command had done well, and To Hell with the Devil was getting ready to come out. And I was obviously a fan of Dokken, who had hits on MTV, hit after hit. Because of my age, that was just the kind of stuff that I was listening to as a teenage boy in the 80s. So I'm a fan of both bands. And it's difficult to separate Michael Sweet's vocals from Stryper. When I hear him sing, whether it's on this project or whether it's on his solo albums, and he has many, I just automatically think of Stryper. Even when he kind of steps out from the expected, it's still Michael Sweet. He still sounds like Stryper. George Lynch, however, doesn't like to necessarily rest on his laurels and repeat the same things that he's always done, although there are shades of Dokken on this CD with his guitar playing, and he's still the same guy. I mean, he did some really different things with Lynch Mob. I'm not real familiar with the body work, but he took that in some different places, as well as his collaboration with Doug Pinnick from King's X and Ray Luzier from Korn, KXM, who have put out two really, really good albums. George is not willing to just keep doing the same thing over and over again. He'll take some risk. This album, however, find neither one of these guys straying too terribly far from what they're known for, and possibly it's because of their label. It's on Frontier, and they have a niche market. They make music for guys like me, guys who are now middle-aged, who grew up in the 80s, listening to this kind of stuff and want to hear this melodic hard rock. So they have a target audience, and they don't stray too terribly far from it. And the musicianship on this album is impeccable. These guys, all four of them, are incredible musicians. Michael Sweet is an incredible singer. He's a really good producer, as he's shown on the first Sweet Lynch album. He's shown his last couple of solo albums and the last several Stryper albums. He's a very competent producer when it comes to this kind of stuff, so it sounds really, really good. But once again, they're not pushing the envelope too terribly far. There are some things on this record that are a little different. I won't be playing any clips because, quite honestly, I'm new to this whole thing, and I don't know how licensing works. I mean, technically, this is a review. But I'm not going to play any clips, not going to quote any lyrics, because honestly, until I know what I'm doing, I don't want to get myself in trouble. But there are 11 tracks on this, and they're all competent. Like I said, there's nothing earth-shattering on this album. There is good guitar playing, there is solid drumming and bass playing, and there's really good singing and some really good harmonies and that sort of thing, because it's Michael Sweet and it's George Lynch. The opening track, Promised Land, starts off with this really cool driving riff and Michael doing that high-pitched scream. It's not as high-pitched as it used to be, but it's still that high pitch, and the drums are just kicking in there. It's kind of got a Maiden, Priest kind of vibe to it, or even some of the newer Striper stuff. The chorus is pretty cool with those gang vocals coming in, and there's this really cool instrumental buildup going into the chorus, and when you get to a George Lynch solo, you just know there's going to be some good guitar playing. So it's a solid track. The first track I actually heard was Promised Land, and it was one of those teaser videos, and it didn't jump out and grab me, but the more I've listened to it, the more I like it. The next track I heard is the second track, Walk, and it's got a really, really cool riff. This is one of the more interesting tracks on the album because it has several different musical sections to it. It's got a real 70s kind of vibe to it. You can hear some Sweet, Queen, and maybe, I don't know, it's just different. There is an interesting note here. There was a conversation I saw on Facebook when they first released this video. There's a misheard lyric on this, which some people have interpreted to be a profanity, but the lyrics apparently dispute the fact that Michael said a profanity. The word he supposedly says is shady. That's the given lyric, but it's heard as something else. But right about 3/4 of the way through this song, there's this really cool mellow section that just kind of comes out of nowhere, and once again it gives you this kind of 70s kind of vibe to it. There's some really cool bass work in this one. Afterlife, the next track, starts off with that dark, brooding Dokken instrumental start, Dream Warriors, that sort of stuff. It does have a kind of modern vibe once it really gets kicking in there, and it kind of sounds like some of the stuff George has done with KXM. And the solo has like a really cool Aerosmith kind of groove to it, so it's kind of pulling from different places as well. Make Your Mark has got a steady beat and some good drumming, and it's a really cool riff, which is kind of a duh thing to say when you're talking about George Lynch. And there's organ in the background, and it's just a pretty straightforward song. Once again, it doesn't really jump out and shake you. The next song, Tried and True, is probably one of my favorites because it does kind of go in a different vibe from what I expect from these two guys. It's a really bluesy kind of jam. Almost sounds like Skynyrd or some of those southern rock bands, and there's some cool organ and some really cool bluesy guitar. It's probably one of my favorite tracks as of right this moment. Unified, the title track, it's kind of got a droning, driving song. I've said this already, and I'll say it again. There's nothing earth-shattering here, but there's competent musicianship. It's straightforward. This is good music just to put on and rock out to. You're not getting junk. It's consistent. The whole album is consistent. The next track, Find Your Way, just has a really cool kind of groove. And once again, the three instrumentalists, well, I guess Michael may play guitar on this too, so the guys just kind of lock into this groove and ride it out. And Michael's just got a great voice. He's taking very good care of his voice. It probably doesn't go off into the really, really super high range like he used to, but he's just got a really cool voice. Heart of Fire is another, I hate to use the term generic, but it's kind of a generic rocker. It's got a really cool riff. And once again, it's four guys just rocking out, playing to their target audience. It's not going to impress anybody. It's probably not going to win fans, but for the folks that want to hear this kind of stuff, they're really going to like it. I'm one of those guys. I like it. Bridge of Broken Lies is another bluesy, slow tempo kind of jam. It's probably another one of my favorite tracks because it does deviate from that just kind of driving modern take on melodic hard rock. So it's kind of a bluesy, not straight up Eric Clapton blues, but it's kind of bluesy kind of vibe to it, a little dark vibe. Better Man, the next track, is another one of my favorite ones. In fact, it may be my favorite track at the moment. And it's got, once again, that moody, dark, Dokken-esque opening. It sounds like horror movie soundtrack music coming on, and it's just a really cool rocking song. And I just have to give the bass player, James Lomenzo, and Brian Tichy, the drummer, these guys are incredible musicians. Everybody's talking Michael Sweet and George Lynch because it's their namesake, but these guys are really good musicians. Thinking back to those guys that I said they played with, these guys are no slouches. And then the last track, Live to Die, it's kind of more the same. It doesn't stray off. You don't get a surprise at the end. It just kind of continues on and ends the album on a very consistent, very competent musical note. If I were to rate an album with 5 being the greatest, this is a solid 3.5. And depending on what mood I'm in, I may actually even go to 4. There's nothing new, nothing incredibly groundbreaking here. It's a bunch of guys who were brought together intentionally by a record to play to a target audience, and they know what they're doing. They deliver exactly what their fans want to hear. So Sweet and Lynch Unified is their new one. It's out. If you're a fan of either Striper or Dokken or just like good melodic guitar-driven rock, give it a listen. It's out on Frontier Record this month.